G'day everyone, my name is Aaron Williams. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mindstar. Mindstar is about workplace wellbeing and positive inspirational leadership. And I work with everyone from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, through to the Woolworths Group, right through to major banks, insurance companies and SMEs, construction. And basically it's about keeping it really positive, healthy and engaging your people to be their best every day. So what I want to do today is keep it really, really simple. I want to talk about why this subject of well-being, workplace well-being and stress-resilient leadership is so important, especially right now. I want to talk about how you can tell if someone that works for you or someone that works with you or someone you love and care about is struggling and what to do about that. And I want to talk about what you can do today or tomorrow to improve your own self-care, well-being and mental fitness as a leader. So, very quick background on me. I'm a mental health clinician. My background, I've spent much of my career working in emergency departments, doing suicide risk assessments on people who've tried to kill themselves the night before, but I actually have a corporate background. And how I got into wellbeing and mental health was that back in 2003, I was living in the UK, working over there, living with my younger brother who was playing professional rugby over there. And his best mate at the time was basically living with us. His name was Nick Duncan. Nick was 21 years of age. He was the cheekiest, probably most full of life little bloke I've ever met. He just debuted for England. English rugby. He ran onto Twickenham second half at scrum half inside Johnny Wilkinson. At the time I think it was the youngest scrum half pairing in the history of English rugby. And in the middle of a brutal London winter, my brother and Nick decided to get some sunshine. They jumped on a plane. I drove them to the airport. They jumped on a plane, went to the Canary Islands. They hopped off and Nick got meningococcal and died within 2 hours in front of my brother's eyes. So I did the big brother thing. We went over, we brought Nick back. And I supported my brother best I could through the funeral. And after that, I crashed and burned. And as a resilient, kind of optimistic, semi-successful 32-year-old man, I was angry. I'd never experienced anything like that before. I tried to drink my way through it, and I became depressed. I was suicidal. My family flew in and said, "We're bringing you home." And they brought me back to Brisbane. And it took me about 6 months to come through that. And when I came out the other side, I went, what the hell was that? Why didn't I know about that? Why are we screaming this stuff from the roofs in workplaces and sporting clubs and the community? Why is it so hard for Aussie blokes to reach out for support? And surely we can do better. And so my mission, and I hope that every single person who's watching this, our mission is we need to stop pulling the bodies out of the river. We need to get upstream and engage with and inspire and educate people well before they're even lining up to jump off. So this is what this is. This is a discussion, the most important discussion at the most important time, because many of us are doing okay at the moment, but many of us are also struggling. So this is about how do we make sure that as leaders our teams are doing okay. So I'll just jump into the presentation. And what I want to talk about is there's three parts to this. The first, I want to talk about stress-resilient leadership. The second is workplace well-being and self-care for leaders. And the third is a Q&A. So jump on, please put your comments in, any comments, any questions. Tell me I'm talking rubbish, whatever it is, please send them through, because the more interactive this is, I think the better for everyone. So let's talk about stress-resilient leadership. And as we do, let's take a step back and let's just think about 2020. In fact, let's think about 2019. 2019 in Australia, we experienced a drought, we had national bushfires, we had freak hailstorms, we had corporate restructures, we had a whole bunch of stuff. People were knackered at the end of 2019 saying, bring on 2020, this is going to be the best year, restart, reset. What happened then? We got smashed by a global pandemic. So I think it's important just to reflect on that across multiple industries, that people were already tired, people were already feeling pretty spread thin before COVID came on. So I think it's important we don't just think about COVID, we actually think about the bigger picture of how each of us is looking after ourselves and our people. So let's talk about COVID. And the work I do with organisations is talk about 4 stages of COVID. The first was that initial shock. This came on very quickly. And I think we had to scramble to get all the infrastructure in place. How are we going to homeschool? How is it different for every single one of us? And the second stage, which we're in now, it's kind of riding the wave. So this is a roller coaster, up and down. It's almost like one of those roller coasters in the dark, in the pitch black, where you're not sure, when the next dip's going to come or the big right-hand turn. It's kind of unknown as we try and flatten the curve, or whatever you want to call it. So as we go on this roller coaster, we need to actually make sure that we're looking after ourselves, because we don't know how long this will last. We're not sure exactly what it means week to week, month to month. But I think what we need to tell ourselves, the narrative we need to tell ourselves and our people and our organisations, is we need to stay focused as well on the recovery, because we will come through this. We know that from world wars, from other pandemics and epidemics. We know that from global financial meltdowns. We will pass through this. We don't know exactly when, and things may be slightly different, but we need to focus on the recovery so that when we do, we're not knackered when we get there. We need to make sure that we look after ourselves and our people so that when we come out the other side, we can actually be re-energised and reunite our people and start kicking goals again when we come through this really challenging time. And I think what we're seeing is that when we do come through this, there will be a new world of workplace wellbeing. Because even through the struggle, I've never seen people so reflective. I've never seen organisations that are focusing on workplace wellbeing and mental health so much. And the question we all need to ask ourselves as leaders, as organisations and as individuals and family members is, what do we want to keep from this? What have we learnt from this experience? What's the silver lining? And I've heard people talk about everything from, more flexibility in the work-home life, maybe spending more time with my kids, not travelling as much, maybe it's not eating out as much, having more money in the bank. It's all these different things about reflecting through this difficult time. What do we want to keep? And what sort of leader do you want to be during this process? So I won't go into any great depth with this, but I think it's important that we all acknowledge what the next 6-12 months, what we need to do as leaders. So what our people will experience is everything from a whole bunch of uncertainty, stress and anxiety as we ride this roller coaster. There's a whole range of financial distress that people will continue to feel. There's all the physical distancing and remote work changes. And I think it's important as leaders that we reflect on the fact that every single one of us is experiencing COVID-19 differently. It's different if you're single and you live alone. It's different if you're a parent. It's different if you have very young children. It's different if you're an older worker and you're thinking about your super, or whether this is actually a physical health concern for yourself, life and death. It's different for every single person depending where you live, your age, your demographic, and it can change day to day, week to week. So I think as leaders sometimes we need to look beyond the behaviour we might see, or the anxiety or the stress we might see in our partners or in our workers or in our peers, and think about what's happening behind the scenes, especially if you're seeing a change in behaviour. And this is a point I make, not lightly, but I want to make very early in this webinar, that this is not just about mental health. Obviously this is Mental Health Week and it's front and centre. This is more than just about mental health or mental illness. This is about how do you help your people, how do you support your people with something that's kind of connected, and how do you connect your people experience, and this is a word, I invented it myself, very proud of it, how do you help your people with their life shit? How do you help your people with their day-to-day life shit that we all experience? And what's life shit? It's workplace stress, relationship stress, financial stress. It's about peak hour traffic. It's about the cost of housing. It's about job insecurity. It's about just getting out of bed some days. How do we help people early on with their life shit and their normal stress so we can deal with it easily there before it moves into psychological distress or anywhere near mental illness? So you can use that. Life shit. I think if every one of us focused on that every day and to help the people around us, then we'll all make the world a better place. So knowing all this, knowing about life shit, knowing about how we're riding this roller coaster, what are the important leadership skills that we need? Dealing with uncertainty is the first one. The old saying in the mental health world is, if you want to give someone an anxiety disorder or heaps of stress, give them uncertainty. How much uncertainty do we have at every single level of our lives at the moment? So how do we help ourselves and our people deal with uncertainty? How do we reduce stress as a leader? How do we increase our focus and concentration in kind of the chaos around us? How do we find our rudder through that? How do we, most importantly in some ways, maintain empathy for our team and our peers, but also for ourselves? I think many of us are very good at being empathetic for others, but how do we actually take the foot off the pedal a bit and make sure we're showing some self-compassion for ourselves in a difficult time? Because if we all think that we're still going to be able to smash it out at 110% in the middle of a pandemic and all this change, I think you're kidding yourself. So it's about self-care, and we'll talk some more about that in just a second. So what I hear a lot of leaders say to me, and especially in the Q&A section of these things, is actually going, that's great, I know what I need to do. How do I do it when I'm leading others who are struggling, when I'm actually struggling a little bit myself through all this change and uncertainty? Well, how we do it, and it's a very simple concept of self-leadership, but it's something that many of us aren't taught. A lot of people are saying, hang on, I wasn't trained to handle this. And what we know is that, especially in the last 10, 15 years in Australia, well, I'd say globally, but especially Australia, I think, the inner world of leaders has been much neglected. So we do a lot of work with operational staff, teach them how to use spreadsheets, make sure that the structuring and the rostering's done, everything else. But what about the internal world? And so often we don't provide that training or that focus on how to manage stress, how to manage uncertainty, how to manage frustration. And at a time like now, it's never been more important, because what we know is that this is actually the source of both professional success or professional failure. And that's the same whether you're a corporate titan, whether you're an elite sports person, whether you're an actor. It's actually how do we manage ourselves and perform at an optimal level. And how do we as a leader show the key leadership traits that we should really be displaying all the time, but have never been more important than in times of crisis? And there's three key things. The first is authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy. So authenticity is being yourself, being able to talk to your people and being real, not pretending that you're... Often we think resilience is about being bulletproof. It's not being bulletproof, it's how you respond to adversity. How do you bounce back from tough times? So be authentic, be vulnerable. Tell your team, look, I'm struggling a bit with this as well. You know, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I will talk to you and take you on the journey. So if you show that vulnerability, what you create is all of a sudden a safe space. If you show a bit of vulnerability, then they will. And you're creating a culture of psychological safety. Because what you want your people to do is to talk up early if they're struggling, either in an operational capacity or if they're struggling from a well-being lens. The earlier they put their hand up, the better the outcome for all. And to do that, as I said earlier, you have to show that empathy for others, but also some self-compassion for yourself. That's great. But in the context of COVID-19, and in the context of it, many of us who actually know a work from home remote world, how do you tell if someone is struggling? And the problem is, we all struggle from time to time, but it's hard to tell when someone who you live in the same house with, who you sit next to at work, is struggling. You know why? We fake it. That's just what we do. You know, every morning we go to work, we put on our corporate mask, we rock up. Just think about, you know, when some of us did work in a building, you'd walk in the front foyer, you'd go hop in the lift, the CEO comes in and stands next to you. Good morning, how are you? What do you say? Yeah, good, thanks. You could have had the worst night of your life. You didn't sleep, your cat ran away, you lost your phone, your baby cried all night. How are you? Yeah, good, great, thank you. We fake it. It's just what we do. It's kind of the gig. So knowing that, it's difficult for that early awareness and that early intervention, because that's the most crucial part. So what I want to do is just very quickly run through a list of things that are just little red flags that you need to look out for. Okay, and as I go through this list, what I'd love you to do is think of someone real, someone you know, whether it's your colleague at work, one of your employees, could be your partner or your brother or whoever it is. I want you to actually think about someone real. These are the little things to look out for. The first is becoming distant from friends or family, so not replying to texts or phone calls. This is especially for blokes. What we do is, if we're struggling, we just retreat to our cave and try and push through. It's probably the worst thing we can do. I know with my brother, if I call my brother and he doesn't answer, then I text him, then I text him again and he doesn't answer the phone, I know something's up. So we've got a deal that if I text him and I haven't heard from him, I'm like, mate, you better text me back or I'm going to drive down and drive the 2 hours and be on your front footpath. So if someone all of a sudden just starts dropping off the face of the earth and you're going, hang on, just check in with them and follow them up. If people are more cranky or angry than before, some people are like that all the time, but if they're just different, if they're more stressed or worried, if they're losing hope that things will ever change, we know that's a risk factor for suicide. So if people lose all hope, so if people are starting to talk hopeless, it's a little flag. It's if people are sleeping more or less, eating more or less, if their drinking or drug use is really going through the roof, or it's just stopping or changing their usual activities. If any of those things, they're just little bells that you should think about. And I think it's a rule of thumb to go, you know what? Things are a bit different, I just need to look out for them. And sometimes it's a gut feeling. If you have that gut feeling, then you need to reach out. You can never, ever make things worse if you ask, are you okay? And how you do that is basic, are you okay? 4 steps. You ask, you make a quiet time where you can say, maybe you go to a cafe, when it's not service, you sit in the corner and go, hey, I just want to talk to you. I just want to check you're okay because, I don't know, maybe I know how busy you are at work. I know you're working from home and you live by yourself. Maybe I know you and your husband just separated. So you just ask and then you listen. People think that they're good listeners. We're not. Our brains are computers. Problem-solving computers, so we actually don't listen. People start talking about a problem, all of a sudden you're jumping over them. You know what? This time I know my brother did this and my sister did this and I know this person. That you just don't listen. So we need to make sure we're listening, and as they're listening, you're nodding and smiling and going, wow, that sounds really hard. What do they say? Of course it's hard. We just separated. There's the kids. And so it's listen, encourage action, whether it's the employee assistance program, whether it's I know a great GP, whether it's, why don't you go camping for the weekend, turn your phone off. Encourage action and then check in. So it's checking in with them and coming back to them and saying, how about we catch up again this time next week? Or I'll give you a bell in the morning and let's see how that went, connecting with that GP. So it's basic, are you okay? And there's fantastic stuff on the Queensland Government website about how to do that. So the next part is the part that I love and is equally important, and it's about what you can do today. And the last thing I want from something like this is I come and chat at you, you watch this, you turn off your laptop and you go back to your normal gruesome schedule. What can you change today and do differently today or tomorrow to change your life? And so what I talk about is 3 really simple steps to well-being. The first is work-life integration. The second is how to stress less. And the third is bringing back the joy. So let's talk about work-life integration. Every single working Australian should ask themselves the 2 very difficult questions. The first is, how am I showing up at work? How am I showing up at work? My second is, how am I showing up in life at home? Because in a perfect world, the two don't overlap. They do, of course, but in a perfect world, you don't bring your shitty day home to your family. Or you're not at home with your family thinking about how many emails you have to answer on the big meeting tomorrow. You're present with the people that you love. And also, it's you refilling your bucket so you're a better employee. How am I showing up at work? And how am I showing up in life at home? Because every single one of us struggles with that, and especially if you're working from home, because sometimes the difference between work and home is turning off your laptop in the spare bedroom these days with COVID, or it's walking from your spare bedroom into the kitchen. So the easiest thing to do is look at buffer time, and how do you actually look after that buffer time in between work and home. And to give you an example of how to do it, my wife, we work together. We have a stressful day. She finishes every day. What she does, she takes 10 minutes to listen to a podcast between work and home. She can be super stressed, listen to a podcast, and all walks out in the family. Hello, everyone. I work with a CEO who obviously has a very challenging job. He comes home from work. He gets to the front door, opens it up, comes in, everyone goes, Dad. He goes, hang on, everyone, give me 2 minutes. He goes into his bedroom. He takes off his work clothes. He goes into the bathroom. He has a shower and literally and symbolically washes the day away, goes back in, puts his dad clothes on, and then walks out. Hey, everyone, hugs all around. So just that buffer time, either before work or after work or both, or even in between our work days, which is like back-to-back Zooms. Put those little buffer times for your day, because it's really going to, it's the way to keep you very, very healthy. The reason is we need to refill our buckets. We all have 6 buckets of well-being. You need to make sure that none of your buckets are running low or empty. They're never going to be all full. That's not realistic. But you need to make sure that none of them are running low, because if one runs low, they pull all the others down. So our buckets are work, physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and relationships. And let me give you an example of how one bucket can pull everything else down. You could love your job. You're the CEO of a unicorn. You're a physical Adonis. You go to the gym 15 times a week. Your muscles on muscles. You're psychologically and emotionally balanced. You meditate on a rock for 2 hours every day, and you're spiritually awakened. But you work so hard and do all these other things so much that you actually never really engage with your partner or your children, and you don't see your mates. That's going to pull everything else down. We need to make sure that there's actually all of those buckets at least half full. It's essential. And what I'm seeing now through a lot of people, what's suffering, or which buckets are running low during COVID-19? Relationships. So we need to connect, be socially connected twice as much as normal, especially if it's via, virtual conferencing or video conferencing or, through texting and different ways. So we need to make sure we're concentrating on our relationships as human beings. What you need to know then is which bucket runs low for you, and then what do you need to do to refill that bucket. I use this. This is a little tool which I'll tell you how you can get for free after this. And basically it's a tool I use probably once a month now, just to kind of as a little check-in and go, rightio, what are the things, how am I going at the moment? Because things are challenging at the moment. So it's which bucket of mine at the moment is struggling. So that's the first step. The second is great, but how do you stress less? I think it's hilarious now that stress seems to have become kind of this thing that we accept. You ask anyone, "G'day, mate, how you going?" "Oh, stressed, mate. Busy. Very busy, stressed." It's become this normal response. I'd just like to meet one person where you go, "Hey, hi, how you going?" "Yeah, I'm good. I'm on top of everything." "Yeah, easy." You'd think, "You lazy bastard." But it's not. It's stress has become this normality that we seem to accept, and it doesn't have to be that way. And the reason is, this is basic Psych 101. It's a triangle, okay? And what happens is, the way we think affects the way we feel, which then affects the way we act. And what that does is then change our perspective or shift our perspective of how we see the world. And so the beauty in that is little tiny changes in the way that we think can have massive changes on how we see the day-to-day, especially during difficult times and especially as leaders. Because you get to choose how you walk into that room, you get to choose how you jump on that Zoom call, you get to choose how you treat the people that you lead. And so the question that I ask leaders is, what's the easiest way to start thinking more positively every day? Not the, gold standard, research-based, what's the easiest way? Because the last thing we want is people to go, oh, great, now I've got to think about my well-being every day as well. What's the easiest, simplest 1% way to start thinking more positively every single day? And the answer is, it's the way you start your day, from the very moment you open your eyes. And it's something that I've called, I made up a name for this one, I call it morning glory. Because who wouldn't want to start every single day with morning glory? Thank you to those people who are smiling at home. So morning glory, the very first challenge for morning glory is this. Get your mobile phone out of your bedroom. I've found that about 90% of people use their mobile phone as their alarm clock. So what happens? In the morning, doot, 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 they wake up, their phones, they reach over, they swipe the alarm off, and guess what they do? Oh, I'm just going to check my emails. I've had 13,000 emails come through overnight. Or I'm going to check my news feed. How many people have died from COVID in some country overseas? How many innocent civilians have been slaughtered in some corner of the world? Why put that stuff in your mind? You've just woken up. You've been awake for 2 seconds. There's someone probably lying next to you in bed, and you've put yourself into the office. You're stressed. You got cortisol and adrenaline running through your brain. You're not present. All of a sudden, you've started stress from the very first 5 seconds you're awake. I'm not saying don't stay aware and check the news, but just give yourself the first 5 minutes of every morning to control how you start your day in a more positive way. And I swear to God, I do this every single day, hand on heart, and I'm telling you this because this changed my life. It was a very simple thing that turned my whole life around. And I did this for the very first moment that I opened my eyes. And this is not my stuff, this is from the Dalai Lama. This is how the Dalai Lama says you should spend, what you should do the minute you open your eyes. And I do it every single morning of my life. The first thing is, you open your eyes and you tell yourself, I am lucky to have woken up, I am alive. Because you are. One day you won't wake up. And I saw this, for the last 10 years, my 92-year-old grandmother, who died in January, for the last 10 years, she'd wake up in the morning, open her eyes and go, sweet, another day on the planet. Because the closer we get to mortality, the more we appreciate every single moment that we have. So why wait till then? Why not remind yourself every morning of your life, I'm lucky to have woken up, I'm alive. The second thing to tell yourself is, I have a beautiful life, because you do. We live in an amazing state, in an amazing country. We have so much freedom. We don't have any bombs falling on our head. You probably have enough food in the cupboard to last you 3 weeks if all the shops closed. You have a beautiful life. And especially in Mental Health Week, if you think you don't have a beautiful life, there's something wrong. And you need to do something about it, because you do. And the third is, I am not going to waste this day. Okay? If you don't do that, all of a sudden you're an autopilot. I'm not going to waste this day. I'm going to live this day. You're driving the bus of your life. You're in control. Sometimes it feels like we're not in control. We are absolutely in control. So I'm not going to waste this day, because if you don't break it up, you feel like a hamster on a wheel. It's just non-stop. I find it cracks me up, people who, you hear that, can you believe it's October already? Well, of course I bloody can. We had January, February, March, April, May. Yes. It's Friday. I can't believe it. Why not? How is your life on fast forward? So open your eyes every single morning and tell yourself those 3 very important things. The next thing I dare you to do, you won't do, but I dare you, and go and get up, freezing cold shower every morning. And don't start with warm and then go cold, freezing cold. People in Tasmania go, are you mad? Go and, my kids think I am insane. They're like, Dad's screaming in the shower again. You get up, you put it on, you set your mind, you jump in the shower, you scream, you're alive. It's got all these physiological benefits for circulation and obesity and a whole bunch of depression, a whole bunch of other things. So I dare you to have a freezing cold shower every morning. People email me and go, I'm doing it. It's awesome. It's called a James Bond shower in the UK. So once you do that, bang, bring on the day. So you've done that, you've set your mind. All of a sudden, you've had your cold shower, you're up, but then you experience real life and the stressful things that happen through the day. How do you deal with that? Very simple. There's a very simple tool called the 3-2-5, and it's a breathing exercise, and it's amazing. And it was designed for elite athletes in the US, and what it does is for runners and swimmers and sprinters, and it helps them bring their anxiety down. So you can use it for stress, you can use it for anger, frustration, and it's changed people's lives. It's an amazing tool. And this is how simple it is. What you do is you breathe in for 3, you hold for 2, and you breathe out hard through your mouth for 5. You breathe in for 3, you hold for 2, you breathe out hard for 5. And you repeat it. You can do 1 as you walk into a stressful meeting, or before you have a fight with your spouse or your child. You can do 10. I do 10 to sleep. It'll put you to sleep. And sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm in the office, bing, busy mind, count them on my fingers, do 10 3-2-5s. It's seriously, give it a try. And we developed this little animation, so you'll be able to try it, and you can do it on your phone. And all you do is learn it. You don't need the animation there all the time. You actually can do it, and then you remember it, and you can internalize it in your brain, and all of a sudden you can use it whenever you want, wherever you want, and it's there for you to utilize. A lot of people in the elite sports people, public speakers use it because it grounds you beautifully. So to finish off, I want to talk about something that sounds very simple, because it is. And it's about bringing back the joy. And I've been running around the country talking about joy for a couple of years. People think I'm weird. But then last year, Harvard Business Review came out and talked about joy in the workplace, and how we seem to have lost the joy in the workplace in a lot of industries. And the reason this is a problem is, what do you think joy is related to? Everything from innovation, creativity, employee engagement, being an employer of choice. So joy, if you have people who experience joy in what they do and their interactions with their peers and their colleagues, all of a sudden, it's absolutely linked to productivity. So I think it's a huge thing to think about joy for the workplace, but also as a leader, joy for yourself. I work in the executive wellbeing coaching work I do. I work with too many leaders who I say to them, what brings you joy? These are senior leaders. Too many of them say, well, I used to play cricket. I used to play touch footy. I used to, have girls' weekends away. I used to be in a wine club, whatever it is. Used to. When was that? 10 years ago. So what do you do for joy now? And they've got nothing. That's absolutely not the way to be successful at work or in life. So it's what joy does is allows you to stop sweating the small stuff. And there's a fantastic book. It's probably 20 years old, probably more. It's about that thick. It's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. So if you're interested, grab a hold of that. It'll take you an hour to read. Because what we know is that there are so many things that we struggle with that come from trying to control the things we can't control. Those things that we go, oh, and we just, it's not that we don't care, not that you shouldn't care, it's just that use your positive energy for the things you can control, for the things that are positive, instead of freaking out about things that you actually can't do anything about. And that could be things like, I don't know, global politics. Could be like, oh, Trump. Get off your phone, stop freaking out about stuff overseas, absolutely stay informed. But put your positive energy into things that you can actually do things about. And they found this is a psychological phenomenon that you may have heard of. It's called the overview effect. And it's a fantastic, I think, example of perspective. And what they found was that astronauts, they did the tests before they left. They went up in space and they did their moonwalk, spacewalk thing, whatever it is. And what they found was these astronauts, when they looked back on Earth, on the planet, and saw Earth what it is, which is just a little blue ball floating through a sea of nothingness. When they returned to Earth and went back to their normal life, the testing found that they'd stopped being so concerned with all the little things like the neighbours or the father-in-law or global politics. Or they just started to stop sweating the small stuff because they had a new perspective. And so they could really connect with the things that they controlled and are most important. So my final question to you, and it's a challenging one, but I want you to think back and think about what brought you joy, real joy, as a 7-year-old child. As a 7-year-old little boy or little girl, what brought you real joy? And so, for me it was, really, really simple stuff. It was like, being a cricket nerd, I was like, putting on my whites on a Saturday morning, or it was body surfing a wave, or fireworks, really simple stuff. And people say things like, riding my bike, or, hanging out with my friends, my Barbie dolls, or climbing a tree, or, going to the ocean. It's the really simple things that bring us the most internal, fantastic, real joy. And so what happens through life is, as we grow up, all the shit gets piled on top of each other, and we lose that ability to reconnect with that real joy. So what do we do about that? Schedule joy back into your life. How ridiculous is it that I did stand here in 2020 and tell you and recommend you got to schedule joy in? Put it in your phone, put it in your calendar. You can go home to your husband and say, Aaron said for clinical reasons I need to have a girls' weekend away in Toowoomba this weekend at a winery. Do something that brings you joy. Surround yourself with people that make you laugh and make you be your best. And the reason why, this is probably my favourite quote. It's about joy, and it says, life can be hard. Laughing is how we come to terms with all the ups and downs and cruelties and uncertainties that we face. And if you want to deal with the uncertainties of 2020, give yourself some joy and have a good laugh. So I'll put this up. If you want to grab any of those tools, the 6 buckets challenge, the mental fitness video, or all the 3-2-5 that will help you sleep or deal with stress or uncertainty, then jump online and grab them. They're all free, because there's never been a more important time to have this conversation. So please send through lots of questions, comments, tell me I'm talking rubbish, but thank you so much in your busy day for taking this time to put an hour aside for yourself. Cheers.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll set up for our question and answer session. Thank you for all your questions so far. I've seen a number of them come through during Aaron's presentation. Just quickly, Aaron, while you're getting ready,